Welcome back to another episode of Hi Events. I'm joining you from Hilton Colombo at the Coconut Tree Investor Lounge. The building is buzzing with excitement, so let's go take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, Ayubowan, and a warm welcome to the franchise launch of the Coconut Tree here in Colombo. I know it's been a tough few weeks. We've been dodging many coconuts that have been falling on our heads, from inflation, to fiscal difficulties, taxes, and more recently the electricity bill. But we assure you that this evening's going to be a little different, and you're here, and that's what matters. It's a Friday, so let's unwind and enjoy the evening. Now, I'm sure you already know that the Coconut Tree is a multi-award-winning chain of restaurants in the UK. But what you probably don't know is their Netflix-worthy, amazing backstory. So I'm going to take you all the way back. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, the UK to be more exact, a bunch of Sri Lankans, in true Sri Lankan style, decided to meet up for a drink. At this drink, an idea was floated to start a seat-to-style pool-in fund where 10 friends, the 10 friends present, would put £500 each for a return of £5,000 at the end of the month. Pretty simple, straightforward. But after the blurry night was over and the hangovers were managed, a business plan was proposed instead, where instead of just walking away with £5,000, at the end of the month, or end of 10 months rather, these 10 individuals would have the opportunity to be early investors in a small business, started with a pool of £50,000 collected over 10 months. And back in 2015 and 2016, that was a decent enough amount to actually start a small business. But as you know, 5 decided that they'll go ahead with it, while the others were like, we'll see, Machang, problems, Machang, no, Machang, child on the way, Machang, I'll get back to you, Machang. And ultimately, only 5 of them decided to go ahead with it. I mean, that's very much in line with our Sri Lankan DNA, the best example, of course, being the current economic crisis. We are averse to long-term investments. But anyway, the 5 who did oblige managed to raise £20,000 amongst them. They maxed out their credit cards, got in everything they could, and put the money together. But at this time, the flat they were living in, or the apartment they were living in, was put up for sale. So they had to start to look for a place. And they found a property which had a 4-bedroom living space upstairs and a rundown, abandoned pub downstairs. And it was £100 or so less from what they were already paying. So they thought, you know what, let's go for it. So these 5 guys decided to jump at it and actually moved into this, rundown pub with living space upstairs in Cheltenham. And they had the rare distinction of being 5 Sri Lankans who owned a dodgy pub in a dodgy part of Cheltenham. But this is when this £20,000 came along after this seat-to-style meetup. So they decided to take a leap of faith and invest the £20,000 into the business. And the daunting task they faced at first was actually doing up the place. This was a very, very old pub that had been closed for a while. And they wanted to do this, exposed brick effect at the back of the bar. So when they checked the prices, the tiles were too expensive. They decided to do it themselves. They start scraping at the walls to only realize there are layers upon layers upon layers of paint they need to get through. So just like a coconut, they kept scraping and scraping and scraping to the point they were so tired, they thought, you know what? It looks rustic. Let's just call this rustic and get away with it. Then afterwards, they decided they needed a bar counter, a copper bar counter, as you know, but it was £5,000, which they didn't have on them. So what they did was they got together, laid out copper pennies, and poured transparent resin on top of it. It's something they'd seen on YouTube, and it turned out amazing. So they decided to go with that. The next thing they needed was furniture. Obviously, people who come to a bar need to sit down to enjoy a drink, and they didn't have any furniture. But two of the investors, mums, were actually from Moratuwa, the furniture capital of Sri Lanka, and they had to first convince their ammis that their golden putas were opening a restaurant and not a bar, right? And afterwards, they had to convince them to part with furniture that had high sentimental value at a rate lower than what was market value. And they succeeded. Furniture was sorted. Now they needed a name. So what do you do when you need a name? You open a Facebook poll. And that's exactly what they did. They got the typical entries, Serendib, Spice House, that kind of thing, Taprobane. But one of the founders decided, hey, why not the coconut tree? Everyone agreed. It sounded cool. It sounded tropical. It was a tribute to where they came from, and it stood out. So coconut tree is what they went with. They got another friend to design a logo. They said, we'll give you a meal and a drink afterwards, in, again, true Sri Lankan style. And he designed a logo for them. And the doors opened in November 2016. The pub saw significant footfall because it was situated right opposite a university. So from the get-go, there were people coming in because they served great cocktails at a really good price point, and the food, or bites as we call it here, were given free. Some devil chicken wings, some hoppers, some chickpeas, etc. But slowly, they realized that people started to come to the restaurant or the property more for the food than actually for the drink. So they saw an opportunity to pivot, put a price on it. They launched a menu with 10 items, and they kept going. 50 covers became 100 covers. 100 covers became 200 covers. And at this point, the stove they were cooking on gave out because it was one of those typical 4-burner cookers you have in your house. It was absolutely worthless, and it burned out on them. And they had to call a professional in to actually help them organize all of this, who you'll meet a little later on today. In 6 months, the coconut tree at Cheltenham won its first award, the People's Choice Award, which was based on votes by the good people in Cheltenham. There was an article that went in the papers calling the founders the new top dogs in town. That title was copied and immediately made the title of their WhatsApp group. And the WhatsApp group of the founders today is called the Top Dogs. Around the same time, the coconut tree became #1 in Cheltenham on TripAdvisor. Now, these guys didn't know much about TripAdvisor or how valuable that top spot was. They were just guys having fun on the floor, talking to customers. They worked hard, played hard. They had a drink at the end of the evening. They used to sit down with people who used to come in, talk to them, have a drink with them, and enjoy the evening. Little did they know that they had garnered over 100 5-star reviews on TripAdvisor. They became #1, dethroning a fine dining Indian restaurant that had held the top spot for quite some time. So to them, it must have felt like probably beating India at a World Cup final. All the accolades, reviews, and ranks aside, what makes the coconut tree quite exotic is the fact that it is one of the first, arguably one of the only, truly authentic Sri Lankan restaurants to come up in the UK. The popularity they have garnered is evident by the fact that they don't have just one, not two, not 3, but actually 9 properties across the UK. These 5 Sri Lankan friends, or machangs if you want to call them that, since pooling in £20,000, have gone on to grow their uniquely Sri Lankan brand to a turnover of more than £3 million. Even in 2020 and 2021, during the pandemic, their trading income was £2.7 million and £4.7 million respectively. With their tremendous growth record and the last 4 years with a strong position, even post-COVID, they're now hoping to open more sites in the UK and develop a franchise model in taking the coconut tree to new markets with an ambition to open up to 35 new sites by 2026. This evening, you're invited to join them in their journey. And the decision before you today, ladies and gentlemen, is to whether you're going to be a let's do this machang, Or we'll see Machang, I'll get back to you, Machang, I have a baby coming, Machang, I'll call you Machang. Right? And I sincerely hope you won't be one of the latter, because they have a vision of taking Sri Lanka's culinary heritage to the world. And they are a family brought together by this vision. And unlike a certain other family, this family won't bankrupt you or let you down. To speak to you next, it's my pleasure to invite 4 members of TCT who are going to talk about what's beneath the husk, so to speak, on why their plan holds water in helping you make an informed decision. The first I'd like to introduce is extremely good with numbers.
As Dino explained, I'm the accountant, so I'm not really sure what I'm doing here because I'm more of a back office person. So please do excuse if I'm not getting this right. So obviously Dino set very high standards as well. Our inspiration, Coconut Tree is not just a bar and a restaurant. For us, it's a family, it's a way of life. We do wake up to do something with Coconut Tree, and we just live day in, day out, anything to do with Coconut Tree. The whole thing started with the passion that we have for food. We always, as Sri Lankans, gather around food. It could be just dal, dry fish, and sambal. But it's always an occasion. It's always a celebration. It's always something to do fun with. Or it's just always an experience. Sri Lankans, they used to say, like, everything matters until the pot of rice finish cooking. So which kind of like elevate the fact that it's just all about food for us. So does for Coconut Tree. And then we started with our food, and then it just kind of goes on and on. And same time, we as Sri Lankans, we love our drinks. That comes to drinks. And just the whole having a good time. So that's what Coconut Tree is about. So putting that into business perspective, when we started Coconut Tree, so we saw the opportunity of having that good time around food and drinks can be extended to our customers, especially to people in Cheltenham at the time, which is pretty much 95% British audience. So when we started Sri Lankan food, there are still a lot of restaurants which kind of pretty much cater for Sri Lankan communities. So we couldn't do that living in Cheltenham. So obviously our target audience was British, so we started catering for that. So that kind of giving us that, what made Coconut Tree different to rest of the Sri Lankan restaurants, and we became some sort of a new trend.
We're really proud of the Coconut Tree brand and what it stands for. We're good people, good food, and good times. Visiting the Coconut Tree is an experience. It's an authentic Sri Lankan experience that's as much about hospitality, the warm Sri Lankan hospitality, and the relaxed island vibes. It is about the food and the drink when you visit the Coconut Tree. It's really difficult here tonight to bring you the atmosphere, the vibe, the feel of being in a restaurant, but hopefully you might be able to see some of that in a little bit when we play the videos, when we finish the presentation. But we have created a Coconut Tree mantra which defines our guiding principles. So don't expect a napkin, it's a roll of paper towels. Do expect an explosion of flavours in our dishes and in our island cocoa tails, which are our version of cocktails. Do expect candles and half coconuts. Don't expect a massive food bill, but do expect to spoil yourself with drinks. Do expect veggies, meats and fish, lots of. Do expect warm Sri Lankan hospitality. Don't expect the volume to stay down for too long.
We used to have a challenge of bringing customers to the table, but now they come once, we've got customers for life. As Helen mentioned, everyone's welcome to the table. So it doesn't matter if a customer has the biggest budget or the lowest, they'll come experience the hospitality and what makes Coconut Tree the Coconut Tree. As we serve Sri Lankan tapas, so small dishes, we have 34 dishes on the menu. So there are dishes, well, something for everyone. We're very popular amongst the vegans with 20 dishes, vegetarians with 24 dishes, and the gluten allergies with 26. Because of this, we are very popular amongst vegetarians, so very popular amongst friends, families, and parties, as they get to order everything and get to try that Sri Lankan combination that we all try to thrive for. Drinks are a big part of the Coconut Tree. Unlike many other Asian restaurants, customers thrive for our drinks. We in fact get customers booking tables just for our drinks. We rebranded the name cocktails to Cocoa Towels to link with our Sri Lankan island vibes. We have mixed in spices, turmeric, coconut, cardamom, and Sri Lankan spirits, arak.
I'm here with Tipu Sultan. Hi.
Hi.
So, of course, this event is an outreach program, or rather an investor launch. Could you just give us a bit of a background as to why you are opening an outlet here in Sri Lanka?
We just want Sri Lanka to be known for their food. And even in Sri Lanka, the spices and the island flavors is not around. And with Coconut Tree, what we've found is that everyone wants a bit of Sri Lanka. Everyone wants a taste of Sri Lanka. And we want everyone to experience that over the world. And we're making it our goal to do that. One year at a time, site by site, employee by employee, guest by guest, we are achieving this.
I mean, returning back to the Sri Lankan roots, am I right?
Yeah, 100%. Sri Lankans are proud to be Sri Lankan, and we need everyone to know this outside of Sri Lanka and in Sri Lanka, of how important every little thing Sri Lanka is.
I'm here with one of the co-founders for the critically acclaimed and award-winning franchise, the Coconut Tree, Mitra Fernando. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Sorry. Thank you so much for joining me as well. I gotta ask, I mean, I hear this amazing backstory, this origin backstory before all the awards, before all the outlets. Can you just recap that for us?
Yeah, so it started never as a business, so we never had a business plan or financials done. So we just started as a hobby. We took a rundown old pub. Some of the boys lived upstairs, and we just lined up ourselves, start serving drinks. And then obviously we had to eat, so we just cooked and we shared that with the customers by giving away free food. became a lot of customers start enjoying the food, giving us a lot of credits, and everybody wanted to know the recipes. Even the customers suggested, why don't you do a restaurant? So very quickly we thought, yeah, well, it's not a bad idea. Why don't we do it? So we eventually start serving food, which became quite famous. People start talking very highly about us. Became a business quite quickly. So within 12 months, we opened our second restaurant, and even at the time, a lot of us still had daytime jobs. So it's kind of a hobby started turning into a business. But 6 years fast forward, we got 9 restaurants. We created this franchise opportunity, and we are here today just to share that journey with fellow Sri Lankans.
I'm here with 2 of the co-founders of the Coconut Tree, Ollie and Helen. And well, I just wanted to ask them, I mean, when you say the Coconut Tree, I hear a global expansion. Could I just get a bit of insight into that global expansion and what your vision brings onto the table?
Shall I talk about that? Well, at the moment, we're up to 9 sites in the UK. We'd really like to grow it more in the UK, starting off with hitting London, where we've not been yet. Once we've got more sites in the UK, we'd like to go further afield, and we'd most definitely like to bring a site to Sri Lanka within this year. Yeah.
Uniquely Sri Lankan indeed, a soon-to-be global brand that will always have the warmth of Sri Lankan hospitality wherever you find that. With that, my name is Isira, and I'll catch you next time on Hi Events.